Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Good to see you guys. Welcome to my room. Today we're going to talk about a familiar phenomenon. There's a lot of people, especially among the N-types, intuitive types, but not necessarily only them, but mostly them, have experienced at least one time in their lives and probably more than once. And before I move on to my topic, just remember that I have written a nice little book by the INFJ type, the Ecstatic Soul. This very lovely product is nothing less than the deepest investigation of the INFJ you'll find online. For less than $10, all the links are available in the description box below to all the Amazon websites. If you cannot find the website that you're looking for, just drop me a line and I'll get back to you. It's available both as an ebook and as a paperback. If you want a paperback, this is an example. The ebook is really nice as well. What is the reality check? When I talk about the reality check, I don't necessarily mean that phenomenon is of an objective or positive nature. Reality check is when an external agent who is necessarily close to you in some way and possibly also in a situation of implicit hierarchical authority vis-a-vis you, tells you that you need to get a grip, that it's time to become an adult and to stop being a child or a teenager and have teenager interests and to get on with the real world and have a serious job and earn serious money and essentially kind of kill the creative child in you. N-type people tend to have strong creative child proclivities, and some of them will be able to channel those proclivities and urges in their jobs, in their professional jobs, and in this way will be able to reconcile the adult with the child in some sense. But in the world in which we live, which is so dominated by late capitalism and communications industries and IT industries and marketing industries and the whole marketing logic and management logic that's dominating more and more of our world, the measurement of everything, the red tape on everything. Everything is becoming more and more bureaucratic and less easily fitted to a creative temperament. Of course, you can have creative jobs within industries, and some of them require high levels of creativity, but it is targeted creativity with a very specific purpose. In other words, you're only creative and supported in your creativity insofar as you're able to deliver an output that corresponds to the expectations of the company. Now, some people have that talent and that particular kind of creativity, which works better if it is driven and has a goal in mind from the start. So you could call it applied creativity. It's great for them. I think that these kinds of people will likely find an outlet for their creative urges in the professional world and again reconcile the child and the adult. There's also people who don't have a great amount of innate urges to creativity. These people will also be able to find jobs because that creative need will not be shouting and screaming to be fulfilled and nourished in the first place. But next to that, you have a large number of people. And I don't want to generalize and I don't want to extrapolate. But if I were to reason about these types of people, these kinds of people in terms of types, I would be tempted to classify many INFJs and INFPs among them, possibly also ENFPs, INTPs, perhaps more so P-types, but INFJs with their strange brand of Janus also very much qualify as potential members of this class. In this class, there is a section of creative types that are not by nature applied creatives. They are what you could call pure creatives. And these people are in a difficult position because there is a part of them that is asking to be fulfilled, existentially speaking, by a need to self-expression. A self-expression that is pure insofar as it doesn't allow itself to be molded and bent by the demands of an external agent. And that's very, very difficult to reconcile with the professional world. Because in the professional world, where you're expected to be a return on investment, there's necessarily going to be strictures on what you can do. Maybe I'll just use the curtains a little bit here so that there's no more of a, well, I think this hopefully can help a little bit, yeah. The creative urge that is pure does not have a practical goal in sight from the start. It's very difficult to reconcile with the adult world of professional employment and mortgages and all of that. So how can these people cope with the world? Well, that's where the reality check comes in as an experience. I think most of the time it's going to be relatives, particularly parents, who are going to express this reality check. Sometimes it can come in more indirect ways and certainly less imperative ways from friends, maybe in the guise of advice or counsel, in any other related form. I think there's always going to be the temptation to agree to this form of advice and to repress your own nature, because there is always an awareness in the pure creative type that they are not really fitted to contemporary society. And so there is a certain kind of feeling of inadequacy and perhaps an attendant shame that comes with it that will always, in some sense, motivate the creative type, the pure creative type, to repress their nature and try to be just like everyone else and take a job and forget about those pure creative urges. Not a good idea, because it's going to come back to bite you. It's going to come back to bite you in the form of symptoms. Psychology and psychoanalysis are pretty helpful in this regard. The symptoms will be psychological and physical. You'll experience some mood swings, irritability over time, of course, as you repress your natural urges, what Jung would call the natural flow of the libido as a creative psychic force, not just a sexual impulse. As you know, Jung differs from Freud on that front. More repression happens, more the symptoms will begin to appear. Like I said, psychological, depression, and its somatic expressions, mood swings, irritability, lack of self-confidence, more and more of a lack in self-confidence, and physiologically, fatigue, stress, anxiety, which is felt physically, an increase in the likelihood of having panic attacks, things like that. So that cannot really be sustainable. So usually what happens is a cycle of taking a job and then having to quit, and then taking another job and quitting again. It's never very satisfying, and it can be a source of redoubled frustration for the person. Part of them is aware that this particular system doesn't really work. So what can they do? Well, it's difficult to place myself as the omniscient advisor who knows what people should do in every single circumstance. I'm not people, I'm not everybody, and at the same time I don't know about each and every person's circumstances. These are always very specific sets of circumstances. But what I do know is that if this creative urge exists, this urge to self-expression exists, it has to be nourished in some way or other. Otherwise, you will not be happy. And in order to nourish it, you need to give it time. And if you need to give it time, give it time. And it doesn't matter if you can't make money out of it. Give it time. Carve out some time for it. This might imply taking a job that doesn't stress you as much, a low-pressure job. It's fine to take a low-pressure job. It could also be a job that's not paying you a fortune. As long as you can serve to maintain you and allow you to have, a decent life and life with a family, to support yourself and your family, and, assuming your partner works as well. Don't get too obsessed with professional ambitions. That can happen also with people who are of high potential. INFJs and INFPs qualify often, where you've always been seen as someone who is talented and who has a gift, maybe an intellectual gift, a creative gift, and so there are expectations for you to do well in society, but your standards are not their standards. And only you know exactly what your standards are. And these standards, primarily, they measure not your rate of success in society, but they measure your quantity of happiness, if you allow me this formula. So only you know yourself, which means that if you want to be able to be sustainably happy, you're going to have to resist those pressures, even if they exert themselves strongly upon you. And to be ready to say, okay, I'll take a job that might not be as career ambitious as other jobs, but it will, first of all, it won't stress me too much. I'll be able to adapt to it, and it will leave me some precious energy and time to dedicate myself to the more creative side of things. And these two combined would allow you to be reasonably happy. But sometimes you'll have to resist external pressures, social pressures, family pressures in the process. And what I want to say to you is, yeah, you have to be tough and brave, but it's better to resist it than to submit to it, end up repressing your natural urges, and end up in a cycle of frustration and self-denial. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. Drop me a like, consider subscribing. I'll see you soon.